Up next, the Knights, the NSW premiers for the first time. Also, Nearhampton and Warners Bay win the Hunters NPL men's and women's competitions. Also, we'll have a look at the local sporting highlights from 1997. That's coming up next here on NBN's Local Sports News. Good morning, my name's Conklin with NBN's Local Sports News. Today, the Knights women celebrating after beating the Eels in the NSW Grand Final. Also, Lambton and Warners Bay win the Hunters NPL Men's and Women's Grand Final. And we have a look at the year that was 1997. But first, the Newcastle Knights have claimed the NSW Premiership for the first time after beating the Parramatta Eels with a 32-12 victory. It was historic for the Knights, who were just too strong for their rivals. And of course, they're now the grand final champions. And because of that, it's since become huge for our beloved women. Good news right up in the Newcastle Herald with, and of course it features the cover of the Knights in both the front as well as in the back, and of course it's the Knights women indeed. And it follows their 32-12 triumph of the Parramatta Eels in yesterday's NSW Grand Final. And of course, because of that, celebrations have been going on right throughout Newcastle and the Hunter throughout the past number of hours. So Julie, how'd you feel when the Knights won the NSW Grand Final?
Yeah, it was great. It was good on them for winning in their first Grand Final, wasn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, good on them.
Macy, how'd you feel?
Yeah, it was really good for the Knights to win, and especially for the girls as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, it was a massive triumph that occurred. And because of that, it was just a best. And it was sensational for the Knights women, claiming their NSW Premiership for the first time. And also, the Knights had to all but end a 21-year premiership drought. And also, it was the first time that the Knights have won a grand final of the NRL since 2001. And also, because of that, tries were scored. Also, their skipper, Millie Boyle, as well as their fullback, Tamika Upton, scored tries, as well as their player, Jessie Southwell, scored one of her own. But however, even though Hannah Southwell was also there, she didn't play because of injury. So how'd you feel? So how'd you feel when the Knights won the NLW Grand Final.
Oh, it was really good. I love the Knights. I was very happy.
And of course, 21 years ago, and of course, Newcastle's immortal Andrew Johns led the Knights men to a grand final victory over the Parramatta Eels in the 2001 grand final. But this time, in the women's decider, which of course occurred yesterday, Jessie Southwell secured one of the best comebacks to lead Newcastle to a marvellous victory over the Eels in the NOLW Grand Final. 11 tries scored by Jessie Southwell and of course Yasmin Clydesdale, as well as Kayana Takarangi and as well as Amina Parky and back rower Romy Teitzel. And also, it was enough to quickly give the Knights their first ever NOLW Premiership title. They arrived home in Newcastle at 10 o'clock last night. And of course, the Knights have a program on Tuesday. Conklin McLeod, NBN News. In the Hunters NPL, Neil Lambton has won the men's grand final in a controversial game which saw a player being sin-binned. While in the WPL grand final, Warners Bay has secured a victorious win in the grand final by beating Newcastle Olympic 4-2. It's a marvellous game. And of course, the grand final of the men's competition, it was the Hunters NPL competition, was a controversial one as Maitland had a player sent in the bin for back-chatting. But also, it was enough for the Lambton Jaffers to secure a goal and to win the premiership. Next year. Then, in the Hunters NPLW Grand Final, Warners Bay were up against Newcastle Olympic. Because of that, Warners Bay crowned premiers, beating Newcastle Olympic with a historic 4-2 win.
And have a look at this. From right outside, you'd think this was an easy pickup. She's completely, the bounce has just taken her by surprise, and you can see they're down on their haunches.
And of course, it was marvellous for Warners Bay, taking out both the minor and major premiership.
Yes, I certainly done all. Zach, they're going to celebrate.
Next, we'll have all the local sporting moments from the year 1997.
I'm going to buy that.
Into big business now, are we?
Nope, I'm quite happy with the small business I own, Louise.
Who are you banking with now, Bob?
Newcastle Permanent.
No, I mean your company banking.
Yeah, we're with the firm.
Didn't know they did business banking.
Well, I have done for quite some time now, Dad.
Oh, good move.
That's mine. Thank you.
Your business is in good hands with Newcastle Permanent.
They're our building society.
The big red ball from the bush to the bay. Yes, it's Lotto. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. It's the big one you want. It's the game for you. 'Cause it's the big red ball that makes dreams come true. Dreams come true. Dreams come true. The big red ball. The big red ball. It's the big red ball that makes dreams come true.
Wake up in the morning, gotta get the because the Herald is the best way to start your day.
Welcome back. Of course, let's go to the year 1997 now, and of course, that year, of course, the Newcastle Knights, of course, launched their spectacular season in March and continued on in April that year. Of course, that month was, of course, when Country secured a victory over City.
Graham Murray says it was the best he's seen the Mariners play. The opening 20 minutes shell-shocked the Warriors and the 20,000-strong home crowd before the visitors let their 10-6 lead slide away in the dying stages of the first half.
We've probably got to learn to concentrate a bit harder in that area, and we'll ram it home to them. It's 2 weeks in a row we've let something in, let it slip just on half time.
Hunter lost 18-14. Apart from missing the 2 points, there are no other major concerns. Troy Stone has a niggling knee injury. Gavin Thompson a minor hand complaint. Both should be fit for the Mariners' trip to Adelaide.
They're playing relatively good football at times. Just a little bit of concentration there at times that letting us down, but I'll tell you, we're very close to a win.
It was a win for the Newcastle Knights, 11-6 over last year's grand finalist St George. The Knights had control for almost the entire game, although Malcolm really admits they let the Dragons in with a chance midway through the second term. Saints landed 2 quick penalties to make it a 4-point ball game, but from then they failed to cross the line.
The fact that they went for penalty goals instead of kicking for touch and putting further pressure on is testimony that the defence was working.
Paul Harrigan's first-half knock and subsequent shoulder complaint is believed to be associated with migraines. Chief has been suffering intense headaches since the pre-season trip to Coffs Harbour. Today, he saw a specialist.
He had some scans last week. There's no problem there, but we need to get to the bottom of why he's coming with these severe migraine problems.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Paul Harrigan was missing from this afternoon's media conference. He also won't make an appearance this weekend. The Knights captain left the field midway through the first half on Sunday after a heavy knock triggered another migraine. He's been busy seeing specialists, and today his doctor told him not to take the field until further notice.
He was just advised that because of the circumstances and the continued migraine bouts, that he should have at least a week off and then decide further down the track.
With Harrigan out, Wayne Richards makes the move into the front row for the battle with the Bears, while Billy Peaton comes into the starting lineup from the bench.
We're expecting obviously a very torrid game against North Sydney, and there'll have to be a lot of football played to knock a team of that calibre off.
Meantime, Andrew John's recovery is progressing to plan. Doctors say he should make a return to the paddock in 5 weeks. The NBN telethon has been given a 5-figure boost. Just under $13,000 was raised from the Knights Roosters pre-season game last month. And Marathon Stadium is Marathon Stadium, at least for the next 2 years. Naming rights sponsorships have been signed until 1998.
The Sydney Flames will clash next weekend with the AIS, the Canberra Capitals and the Brisbane Blazers in the Mingara Invitational Tournament. It's a great chance to showcase the best in the sport to the Opals of the future.
It is all about promoting the sport at a junior level. With numbers, you get quality. So if we can promote high-quality games, the kids get to see, meet, and to know what they have to do to reach that level.
The tournament will be a real test for the 7 Olympians competing after the highs of Atlanta.
It's always in the back of your mind. It's a great memory, and we're just going to concentrate on this year. We've got a few changes, which hopefully are going to help because we haven't done that well in the last few years. So a change may do the job.
For Michelle Griffiths, it's a whole new ball game. For the last 3 years, she has helped Adelaide win the title, beating the Sydney Flames on each occasion. Now she has joined the old enemy for 1997.
Let's hope this time I can turn it around for the Flames and I can win another championship for me, but also for the Flames. Maybe it's the link they've been missing.
And for long-serving WNBL player Rhonda Bates, Adelaide will still be the one to beat.
They always are. And with Michelle, I think we're going to try to rub it in their faces a bit this year. But, of course, Boleen is also going to be pretty tough this year. And I think everyone's had a few changes here and there between coaches and players. And I just can't wait to get started.
A final warm-up session for the Speedway sidecars. Newcastle duos Darren Caife and Dean Hughes and brothers Gavin and Dean Edwards dusted up a storm this afternoon at the showground. While their event will be the feature of Saturday's Track Masters, it's one of a number of classes on the big bike program. Other races will involve motocross, dirt track, post classic and Harleys. Preliminary heats start from 4, main racing at 7 o'clock. Meantime, the 700 horsepower sprint cars make their final appearance of the season at the Newcastle International Motordrome tomorrow night. 22 cars have entered for the feature, while other events include modifieds, street stock sedans and stock cars. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Curry at Curry is never an easy assignment in the NRL, but South Newcastle looks set to score the first points of the match when the Lions made a break early in the first half. The scare must have woken the Bulldogs. Consecutive sets of 6 at the other end of the park, and Curry took advantage of the Lions' sloppy market offence. 6-0 a couple of minutes later, the Bulldogs proved they could run the ball as well. Plenty of pace and good hands giving the local crowd something to cheer about, and Curry a 12-0 lead. Souths fought back to finish the match 6 points in arrears. It's Curry's second win on the trot. Meantime, this afternoon at St John Oval at Charlestown, the Butcher Boys had plans of carving up Toronto, and the new look side did just that to race to a 6-0 lead. In perhaps a hint of better things to come this season, it was all going well for Central, but the Scorpions put some sting into their attack to level the match at 6 points apiece. Toronto applied more pressure shortly before the break, and this time the points came under the black dot. The Scorpions went on to win, but the Butcher Boys were far from disgraced. The Newcastle Breakers met Collingwood knowing they had to win to keep alive their slim hopes of a berth in the finals, but despite shot after shot from both teams, no one could smash the deadlock. The match finished 0-0, enough for coach Cosmina to play the optimist. Australia had to win the third test at Newcastle's International Hockey Centre to wrap up the series, and after 6 minutes the breakthrough came when left winger Kelly Free netted after a scramble in front of goal. Australia could have gone further ahead, but the shots didn't find the mark. A first-half onslaught from the Hockeyroos had the tourists on the back foot, the Atlanta gold medalist pounding the Germans' defensive line. But after finding the early lead, the Aussies found it tough netting the second. Germany held on, although they too struggled in attack. The match finished 1-0, Australia scoring an unbeatable 2-0 lead in the series, but the team admits there is still room for improvement in tomorrow's final test.
The German girls are certainly quite aggressive and they protect the ball really well, so we have to get in there and be a little bit more aggressive. I think we're a little bit tentative at times.
A good win for Australia and maybe a good win for Newcastle. The city is trying to lure international teams to the region in the lead up to Sydney 2000, and local organisers have received positive reports from the match.
Australian women's hockey have praised us no end. The players themselves have praised us.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. It was the start of Newcastle basketball's 50th anniversary, and Butch Hayes was first to the party. Fellow import David Simmons also found the early mark before Tony Jensen drove Newcastle to a narrow lead. But mistakes crept in and the visitors raced away. Tremendous speed across the court and Brisbane crept ahead. Leonard White and Leroy Loggins outstanding as the Bullets took a 3-point quarter-time lead. The deficit exploded to 12 at the main change, and while the Falcons rallied in the third quarter to edge back, Loggins was the difference in the final term. He landed 12 for a total haul of 31. The 125-113 loss was Newcastle's third on the trot. The Billabong Pro may be getting the most attention in the surfing world at the moment, but the future champions of the ocean also made waves today in Newcastle. 56 of the region's best young surfers enjoy perfect 1 to 1.2 metre conditions in the Junior Teams Challenge at Dixon Park. It was won by Merriweather. Headlands finished second. Meantime, at Bonny Hills near Port Macquarie, over 60 Malibu surfboard riders competed today for a spot in the state longboard titles to be held in Newcastle at the end of May. Rainbow Beach provided a large swell brought on by the recent cyclonic conditions. Finals will be held tomorrow. And the preliminary heats of the 8th Annual Track Masters were held a short time ago. Tonight's program at the Newcastle Showground involves speedway solos, sidecars, motocross, dirt track, post-classic and Harleys. Owen Craigie told Knights management today he was the subject of racial slurs during the clash with Norths. Club management wasted no time in condemning the attack. They made direct contact with the Australian Rugby League.
Racism has no part in our society or on the football field, and needless to say, the club deplores any incidents of racism and without any reservation backs Owen Craigie.
Craigie claims North Sydney centre Chris Caruana made racial taunts in the second half, and while the Bear apologised after the game, it's an incident which the club says has never happened before.
The club is extremely proud of the strength of character Owen has shown in this matter. He has had the guts to stand up for himself and his race.
The ARL has no guidelines on how to deal with racial incidents. Chief Executive Neil Whittaker launched an immediate inquiry.
It's unacceptable. As far as the community goes, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable in our sport.
It's not the first football code to come under attack for its lack of standards. Last year, the AFL was forced to take action after an incident involving Essendon's Michael Long. The AFL now totally outlaws racial vilification. The ARL is set to adopt a similar policy. Pleased with a quick response, Newcastle has requested the issue be taken no further. However, Caruana has come in for disciplinary action by Norths. He's been fined and dropped from first grade. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Matthew Johns left for the meeting with the ARL's judiciary a short time ago. He'll answer a high tackle charge resulting from this. Johns wouldn't be drawn on whether he thinks he'll be sidelined, but his defence will work around the theory the tackle was nothing more than reflex.
When I did hit him, I thought I may have got a caution and maybe had to go down to the judiciary, but I was a little bit surprised when he sent me straight off.
Johns will answer the charge at around 8 o'clock tonight. Teammate Stephen Crowe lucky not to be going with him. It wasn't a good day all around for Newcastle. They also returned without the points, but coach Malcolm Reilly was still pleased with the team's performance.
Look, after 12-0 and after we had 13 players on the park, I'm very convinced that we would have come home with a good win.
The Knights' loss followed another one by their Super League competitors Hunter. The Mariners emerged from a long talk with coach Graham Murray holding report cards. Muzz admits some of them shouldn't be seen by mum and dad.
There's a few disappointing ones, but they've got to be responsible for their own actions. And, I give them a report every week and I scale it from 0 to 10. There's no 10s.
And making it a bad trifecta for Newcastle's winter teams on the weekend was the Falcons. After their third consecutive loss in the pre-season cup, coach Sean Dennis will take the side for an alternative training session tomorrow.
We're going to have them do a boxing circuit, and the one thing I think will be good for them is that boxing is very intense and you've got to keep up a high intensity level, and that's what I want the guys to learn.
At practice today, Cosmina put his forward line through an intensive session in front of goal. Despite plenty of opportunities against Collingwood last weekend, the Breakers consistently failed to find the net, the match ending a 1-1 draw.
I think at times the guys probably don't put enough thought into how they're going to finish. They just think, we'll swing a leg and we'll see what happens, and that generally isn't enough to get by. Occasionally it works.
Occasionally won't be good enough this Friday night. The Breakers must defeat reigning Ericsson Cup premiers Melbourne to keep their final 6 hopes alive. Despite being in the same position, the Knights have hit some recent good form.
We've got to be prepared to go out and compete and kick and bite and scratch and punch and like we normally do, as well as try and play a bit as well, and then we might get a result.
Striker Clayton Zane is back from a layoff with the flu, but doesn't figure in Cosmina's plans for the match. He'll decide on Friday whether Zane will even get a spot on the bench.
I'm not going to change the team. It's it would have been 3 changes in 3 weeks, and it is unnecessary. The reason we got success earlier on was that we had consistency in selection.
The match at Breakers Stadium kicks off at 7:30 on Friday night. Phil Hind, NBN News.
The Cowboys are glad to be wearing the underdog tag. They held a private training session this afternoon. The boys from the north determined not to give away their secrets. However, bookmakers suggest they don't have too many to give. Hunter is favourite for tomorrow night's battle, and considering the poor start to the season, it is a little surprising.
I didn't realise we were favourites, but I suppose the home ground advantage might influence that a bit. And I suppose the Cowboys have only won 1 out of 3, so maybe the home ground just weighs in our favour.
The calm before the storm at a pre-match media conference. The Mariners joined by the big names from the other side of the border. They give the Mariners the utmost respect.
We've seen the Mariners games and they're unlucky to be not at least 2 from 3. We probably think we're the same, actually.
Meantime, more team changes for the locals. Graham Murray has announced John Carlaw will start in the centres. He makes his first grade debut, as does hooker Richard Swain. Noel Goldthorpe is captain. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. There wasn't much support for Lakes at Maitland last night, but the Seagulls still managed to open up a commanding first-half lead. The Pumpkin Pickers replied with a try of their own to kick off the second term. But Lakes had control of the match. Another 4-pointer 10 minutes later sealed the result, the defending premiers continuing on from where they left off last season. But it's not all good news. David Smith will front the judiciary on Monday night after being sent off for headbutting in this incident in the second half. He's not the only player with a tribunal meeting. Cessnock's Peter Ridings will also make an appearance. He's been charged after a punch-in-back play during this scuffle between the Goannas and South Newcastle on Friday night.
For the luckless Tigers, it was a case of history repeating itself as the Chargers for the second year running belted Balmain, this time 26-6, and they were led superbly by the forwards and a rejuvenated captain.
We haven't got a big pack, but we've got a very mobile pack, and just get over the top of their pack and then let our backs have a bit of room to move. So we work real well, and we train hard during the week after it was a very poor performance last week, but we come up well this week.
While Graham Mackay is in great form, another standout was the senior citizen of the Chargers' young outfit. Martin Bella showed state of origin touch, and he's loving it.
This crowd of boys, starting from nothing last year, and the basis is still the same this year. To see the development in them since our first game last year is amazing, and it's a tremendous feeling, one of the best feelings I've had for a lot of years.
Coach Economides was lavish in his praise for his halves, especially Wes Patton.
Wes was very keyed up to play well against his old club from last year. He did just that. He stood up Timmy Brasher, which is no easy thing to do.
But there's more to do, beginning with the Dragons on Sunday.
We targeted 2 wins out of the 3 games, but as I said to the boys, the 3 were achievable. Unfortunately, as you said, that got away from us last week. But we'll enjoy the night and be focused on St George next week.
Matthew Gidley was one of the best on the park in the night's crushing win over South Queensland, but with the return of Matthew Johns, Malcolm really had no choice but to drop the former Australian schoolboy to the bench. It's the only change to the team for the trip to the Sydney Football Stadium, but Gidley will see time on the paddock.
He proved on Sunday he can handle not only the position but the direction of the other players as well.
The side trained late this afternoon after a marathon meeting at the stadium. While the experienced players in the side have kept the intensity from that big weekend win, Malcolm really concedes the up-and-comers are finding it a little tough.
The young guys, they tend to sort of dwell on what's happened as opposed to refocusing and improving that area.
Matthew Johns returns as captain. Tony Butterfield leaves with 1 from 1.
Matt's the future of the club, and he does a good job while he's out there, and I'll just continue to do my best.
After the week's rest, Matthew is looking forward to his comeback. The Knights' playmaker is getting a new reputation.
I must be one of the most feared defenders in the competition at the moment, but I have to keep him down.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
At just 20 years of age, Damien Robertson from Albury has spread his wings and made the big time, joining the Falcons as the final member of their 10-man roster.
A relief to finally get the news that I had the spot. There's 3 of us vying for it, and we'd played a course of games over the last couple of weeks, and to get the news that I got the spot was, very exciting.
Short but quick, Robertson emerged from the 3-cornered contest against Daniel Palmer and Robert Nikolic as the player with the most to offer. Head coach Sean Dennis says Robertson's good defence skills and ability to make smart on-court decisions made him the standout rookie.
Damien has shown that he has those 3 qualities, and he's been compared to another Wayne Larkins, who was a short player that 5'8" that played in the league for 15 years. To have that comparison, I think, is fantastic.
At 181 centimetres tall, Robertson is the smallest basketballer on the roster. Playing back up to Falcons star Butch Hayes, the point guard says he'll be relying on his speed to outmanoeuvre the opposition. With the lineup now finalised, Dennis says the Falcons are shaping up for their most competitive season yet.
By mid-season, we'll be playing a great brand of basketball, and we're really working towards one of the goals we set ourselves, and that was to be, a really tough team to play against, and that's starting to come along fine.
Simone Cobb, NBN News.
As if ARL boss Neil Whittaker didn't already have enough on his plate with Super League, he's now dealing with racism in football. The issue flared last Sunday when North Sydney centre Chris Caruana directed racist comments at Knights centre Owen Craigie. Caruana was swiftly fined and ousted from the Bears' first-grade squad. In an attempt to end racism, the ARL is coming up with new guidelines.
It ought to be that people, if we do have an incident, that it gets managed through mediation and people get back on with it. And I'd like to think that the situation with the fines is the secondary thing.
Despite that, the ARL will recommend a substantial fine, rumoured to be in the vicinity of $20,000. Meanwhile, Whittaker says he's happy with the support given to the ARL, both Australia-wide and in Newcastle. With reasonable crowds turning out for both Knights games this season, Whittaker isn't looking back.
We're very, very confident that the support will be here for the events that the Knights put on, and nothing else matters much.
Blake Doyle, NBN News. Malcolm Reilly has all but worn out the tape of Newcastle's clash with Norths. The Knights coach sticks by his comments it was a great 12-man performance, but adds there'll have to be a similar effort if Newcastle is to crush South Queensland. With the Johns brothers sidelined through injury and suspension, Leo Denver and Matthew Gidley combine in the halves.
I just want the two kids to lead the forwards around the park and make sure that when we turn the ball over, that it's turned over in pressure situations.
Reilly has no doubt the combination will click on Sunday.
They're two gifted players. Both of them have got great skills. And just to play safe at times and back themselves, with the running game as well as the passing game.
The duo worked on the Knights' attacking game at training this afternoon, but Leo concedes they'll also come in for attention in defence.
Well, I think they're going to point us out, being young blokes, and they say the inexperienced, but I think we're going to handle it pretty well, so got no worries.
Knights officials are hoping for a bumper crowd. Their Marathon Stadium debut a fortnight ago was marred by atrocious conditions. The Knights won then. Bookmakers forecast a similar result against the Crushers.
Brad Godden and Robbie McCormack trained with first grade this afternoon after being dropped from the A-team for the weekend's clash against North Queensland. They were back with the top squad today. Despite that, both are still in reserves for the round 5 clash with Canberra. Graham Murray considers their duo part of firsts, but having said that, he wants to stick with the same lineup that won on Saturday. He's named an unchanged team. Noel Goldthorpe is captain. Murray was impressed with his leadership.
I was happy with the way Tony played too, but I think Noel's game was a lot better. His support play and his direction was pretty good.
That win over North Queensland has put confidence back in the Mariners camp.
Certainly it eased the pressure off everyone, and as you could, the last couple of days have been very relaxed and everything's going along smoothly now, so everyone's back to normal.
The pressure is now coming from within. Several players are finding form, and first grade selection is a week-to-week proposition.
Yeah, there's plenty of young blokes, and plus you've got Brad Godden and that, he lost his spot, so you've got plenty of pressure on him.
Disappointed at a disastrous start to the season, Canberra will be out for its first win on Sunday. While they lost Barry Lee and Ken Nagus in last night's loss to Brisbane, Ricky Stewart is expected to return from injury. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The mud was flying as competitors tested the Tomago track today for a pre-title hit-out. It's an impressive field with an international flavour, competitors from the US, New Zealand as well as Australia's best.
Current Australian champion that's Fugulumi for Western Australia. We've also got the 4 times previous Australian champion, Warren Eakins from Northern Territory. The current New Zealand champion, that's Graham Standring. He's going very, very fast. He was here last week, as a matter of fact, and gave everybody a bit of a shock.
Locals Adam Park and Roger Clark make up the local contingent. Organisers say they could place in the top 15. Drivers take to the track on Friday night in the first of 18 heats, but the real action happens on Saturday night with the 40-lap final. Previous years have been a washout. Organisers are hoping otherwise.
Every other year we either get washed out or we get one day of rain and the other overcast, so it looks like the weather's going to be with us.
Saturday night's program will be rounded out with the super sedans.
The day after, and it was smiles all around in the Newcastle camp after being quoted at 14-1 to win the premiership a fortnight ago. The Knights have now firmed into fives. It's by far the biggest move in ARL betting, and it mirrors Newcastle's outstanding form. Malcolm really is understandably pleased with last night's game, in particular the effort of his young backline.
We knew that the outside backs of the Roosters, had some weaknesses there, and we exploited them.
But the Knights' victory may have come at a cost. Matthew Johns was out of action this morning. He tore muscles in his thigh after this kick in the final minute of the match.
Obviously, just feel pretty sore, straight after a game. You always feel bumps and bruises when you get a certain, sort of, not a major injury, but a fair knock in a place or a tear. Always pull up sore straight after the game.
Adam McDougall also needs to prove his fitness.
Yeah, I've got some slight ligament damage to the ankle, but once again, there's plenty of time, We'll have a look in the middle of next week.
The Knights host Parramatta next Sunday. A replay of the 96 final at Newcastle's #1 sports ground after winning the toss and electing to bat. Waratah Mayfield couldn't have imagined a worse start. They lost the first 4 wickets cheaply. Matt Trail dismissed for 7 when he scooped to Mark Bailey. At 4 for 26, Murray Christie provided some resistance to take Waratah to 68 at lunch, but that was as good as it got, Waratah crumbling to be all out for just 121. With more than a day left, it seemed a mere formality for Wallsend, but Jason Padgett's wicket in the third over started the Tigers' collapse. Several quick wickets and Wallsend was reeling at 6 for 48. They held on late this afternoon to take the match to another day.
Newcastle in the red dominated the field, taking an early lead over Merewether in the Year 10 final. The modified game of tens made it a free-flowing game, the tournament following on from last year's success. In the end, the stronger Newcastle side came through for a couple of late tries to cement a 27-5 victory over Merewether. The champions of both the Year 10 and Open divisions now progress through to the final series in Sydney, which will be played as curtain raisers to the Super 12 match between New South Wales Waratahs and Orange Free State from South Africa. That's being played at the Sydney Football Stadium on the 12th of April.
Last weekend's match against the Melbourne Knights was virtually over before it began. 2 goals in the opening 5 minutes put the Breakers on the back foot, eventually going down 2-1 despite a spirited fight back.
We were a little bit gung-ho, I think, and a couple of guys were caught out of position in the first 5 minutes, and we weren't really focused on what we were supposed to be doing, and so we suffered for it.
It's a mistake Cosmina doesn't want repeated this week. This morning, players were put through only a light training run at Breakers Stadium. The last time they met Gippsland in the opening rounds, it ended a 2-2 draw. And while the Falcons currently sit in second last, they've won their last 2 matches. The Breakers are third last, but Cosmina says his players haven't given up hope of a berth in the final 6.
What they have to realise now is that the season isn't over and done with, that we've still got a real slim chance of making it, and if we can get 4 wins out of 4, then that's what we should be aiming at.
It will take more than 4 wins against some of the top sides in the competition. It will require a complex set of results, with many of the top teams losing or drawing matches. Phil Hind, NBN News.
There was an accident up at Newcastle Speedway when suddenly one of the drivers over there crashed. But thankfully, he survived. And of course, a lot of drivers were, of course, winners. And of course, it all but ended with a bang. Midway towards the Speedway Championships in Newcastle, there were a couple of incidents that occurred. First,
up and over and high onto the concrete wall. A sensational incident in Heat 3 of the Australian Speed
an incident occurred up at Heat 3, which resulted in a nasty accident.
It was smiles all round as the Wildfires launched season 97, their third in the AAMI Cup. 1995 saw the first grade side take 11th position, one better last year in 10th, but all eyes are on 1997. The club has been hard at work in the off-season, working on a solid tight five. Selectors also have the task of choosing from 4 halfbacks for the first grade side. It's a luxury the club's never before had.
The depth appears to be there that we haven't had in the other seasons, and that can only augur well for the results.
The Wildfires have also been hot in the pre-season, with comprehensive wins over the University of New South Wales, Manly and New South Wales Country. They go into this weekend's opening round of the Hahn Cup against Warringah exuding confidence.
I equate Manly's pack nearly to Warringah, and to put it bluntly, we thumped Manly 2 weeks ago, and that's what won us the game, and if we can reproduce that, and there's no reason why we can't, we've got to be a big show against Warringah.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
He's new and he's just arrived in the Breakers first grade. 17-year-old rookie Brad Swancott was hard at work today, and he'll get a lot more of it at Breakers Stadium tonight. Swancott makes his debut at the expense of Liam Baker, who's out with the flu, becoming the youngest goalkeeper to start in the NSL.
Well, actually, the first I've heard it was just from you, so I don't know, it comes a bit of a surprise, as all things are, I suppose.
With both teams needing to win to keep in the hunt for the finals, it's likely to be a busy night.
He was telling me that I will be the centre of attention, but I'm not sure. We'll see how things go.
Things start at Breakers Stadium in under an hour. The Newcastle Rugby League pre-season competition continues this weekend. Tonight, Cessnock hosts Souths and Toronto play Wests. Well, there are 3 games tomorrow. Maitland meet Lakes, Waratah Mayfield visit Curry, and the Bay battle the Butcher Boys. The official pre-season cup for the Wildfires kicks off this weekend. Newcastle plays Warringah. The Newcastle District Cricket Association semi-finals start tomorrow. Waratah Mayfield play Cardiff Boolaroo at the No. 1 Sports Ground, while the other matches between Wallsend and Charlestown at Carl Oval. The Falcons are out of contention in the NBL pre-season cup, but are still looking to head into the season proper on a winning note. They meet Sydney and Townsville tonight, then Townsville and Cairns tomorrow. And Surfest is hotting up. The Bodyboard Pro is on this weekend at the Cliff. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. A body blow for the Breakers even before kick-off. Jason Bennett stretched from the field after being hit by a baseball from the pre-match entertainment. If that was bad, the next 4 minutes were worse. Needing to win to keep their faint finals hopes alive, Newcastle was under fire. The Knights charged, and rookie goalkeeper Brad Swancott couldn't have had a worse introduction to the Ericsson Cup. 2 minutes later, the visitors found space again, and Andrew Marr finished off. Number 3 nearly followed, but Swancott palmed off the challenge before Clayton Zane brought the margin back to 1 in the shadows of half-time. Troy Halpin almost managed to find the leveller shortly after the break, but it was a scoreless second half, the Melbourne Knights winning 2-1.
The semi-finals of Newcastle District Cricket for 1997 got underway. It was massive. Waratah Mayfield was up against Cardiff Boolaroo, but also who will meet in, of course, the preliminary final or the grand final. And of course, it will become huge.
It's the biggest move of the season in ARL betting. Newcastle's odds almost halved overnight by bookmakers. The Knights' victory was the most impressive this season, the 44-0 result equalling the record for the club's biggest winning margin. Adam Muir, one of the heroes, after his 3-try haul.
3 tries in one game, I'm very happy with that, but I don't think we'll have it again, mate.
The Knights' backline ran riot over the Crushers, even without halves Matthew and Andrew Johns.
Obviously, the best backline since I've been associated with the club, and many would probably say, in the club's history.
Leo Denver was wrapped with his effort.
I'm very happy, mate. Very happy indeed.
While Adam McDougall shared the sentiments of a backline that's oozing confidence.
We're just enthusiastic. We back each other. We believe in one another, and we know we're better than any other back line. We just want to show it.
Malcolm really has the unenviable task of team selection for Friday's clash with Sydney City. Matthew Johns is back, but that scoreline is hard to forget.
44-0.
Meantime, a strength and conditioning session for Hunter in the wake of the club's first victory in Super League. The Mariners won 38 points to 10 on Saturday.
It'll lift the confidence skyline now, especially we need it going down to Canberra this week against the Raiders.
The Mariners beat Canberra in a trial at Queanbeyan. They don't expect a warm welcome this weekend.
I don't think it'll sit pretty with them sitting on the bottom of the table, so they'll be fired up to beat us, that's for sure.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The Newcastle Rugby League judiciary knew about a lot during the argument between two local clubs. And of course, Lakes United had a player sent off, while South Newcastle also had a player sent off for punching.
Resuming at 8 for 80, Wallsend needed 42 runs for a first innings victory, but when Steve Story was caught in the third over of the day, Waratah looked to have it all sewn up. Tailenders Nathan Holloway and James Eyre were left with the big task of hauling in the total, but their efforts lasted only a few balls. Wallsend all out for just 88. With the first innings victory to Waratah, the Tigers tried gamely to turn the tables in a wild chase for an outright result, but it didn't look such a daunting task when opener Matt Trail was caught for 5. That wicket was soon followed by another, and Waratah was reeling at 2 for 9. Although it was slow going, Waratah steadied the innings and Atia was 4 for 82. The shine had gone off Wallsend's game and they conceded soon after. Waratah Mayfield, the new premiers. Great conditions for the newest event of Surfest. 1 metre sets gave competitors plenty to work with in the Indigenous Pro. After yesterday's round 1 heats, 4 finalists were left to fight out the decider. Michael Darcy from Redhead led the local challenge, while Tim Pager, Andrew Ferguson and Ty Arnold also made waves. Arnold was outstanding, the Central Coast surfer manoeuvring his way to win the first final. Ferguson was runner-up. Another full round of competition this afternoon, and Arnold was again the one to beat. He advanced straight to the final with effortless wins in the heats before turning on another faultless display to win the second round final. The 16-year-old will try for a whitewash result in the last round tomorrow. Making it a Surfest extravaganza, the inaugural 1 kilometre ocean swim. As some took it seriously, others swam for fun and the field spread out immediately. Leading the way and first back to shore, Swansea Belmont's Nat McGregor. Organisers expect the ocean swim to be made an annual event.
The Hunter Mariners will field an unchanged lineup for the match against Penrith despite the disappointing loss to Canberra at the weekend.
We were beaten by Canberra. I think we were disgraced, and I want to give them at least one more chance at making it right.
Robbie Ross and Noel Goldthorpe are likely starters despite injury, while John Carlaw should be right after more physio to a cork thigh. The Mariners have gone up against some pretty tough away games, including Auckland, Adelaide and Canberra, eager to perform for their coach. Mariners coach Graham Murray is calling on his side to focus.
Yeah, we've probably got to play the game a little bit quicker, I suppose. And if we do see something that presents itself, if we do see a gap, we've just got to really seize it rather than maybe take the one more ruck. When the option's on, we've got to make sure we make good use of it.
And a little support from home-side fans wouldn't be unwelcome.
Oh, it'd be lovely to have people there, but I mean, we're struggling to get them to our games here. I don't know why they travel.
It was fun and games as Australia's leading basketballers helped launch the Mitsubishi Challenge in none other than a Mitsubishi. 1997 is shaping up as a big year for the NBL, with officials claiming it'll be a case of quality basketball over quantity. The end of last season saw the axing of 3 clubs, Gold Coast, Geelong and the Hobart Tassie Devils. The NBL is now looking at introducing a second Sydney team. Moves are also afoot for Hobart to re-enter the competition. A confident Falcons captain Butch Hayes was flying the flag for Newcastle. Hayes is keen to better both last year's 12-14 win-loss record and this year's poor pre-season start.
They were out of finals contention and recently out of touch, but Robbie Ironside threw the form out the window. Newcastle took the lead to the break, but after only 1 minute of the second term, it was gone. A haunting fog also put its mark on the game before Shane Price headed through the visitors' skeleton defence. And when Troy Halpin instrumented another goal a minute later, one could have been forgiven for thinking it was Wembley. The goal spree continued, but this time for Marconi, captain Andy Harper led by example. Before Halpin found the magic touch again, his corner finding Matty Austin and a 4-2 Breakers lead. After arguably his best performance this season, Halpin then got due reward courtesy of David Lowe's pinpoint cross. (5-2) the result, Newcastle again on the right side of the scoreboard against one of the big names of the Ericsson Cup.
Another incident occurring up at Newcastle, and because of that, it was an accident that occurred. It was right up in the air. But thankfully, none occurred right up in the cars. And of course, right up in the motorcycles. The Knights managed to quickly score a lot of tries.
And as you know, the game intensity fell away in the second half. We came up with a lot of errors. Had we started the game playing in that style, we would have probably lost the game.
But thankfully they didn't. And of course, Newcastle managed to win.
They were the toast of last weekend's round with an entertaining win against Sydney City. Finding form, the Knights are ready for their next clash against Parramatta, who'll be spoiling for a win after recent poor showings.
That obviously will be a very difficult game. They're on the back of a number of losses, and they're too good a side to be in that position.
The Knights can ill afford injury worries, and it appears both Matthew Johns, who damaged his leg with a kick last weekend, and Adam McDougall will be starters. The Knights' Aboriginal contingent is putting some spark back into the side, notably Leo Denver, running away with his chance at half, filling in for the injured Andrew Johns.
His support play is the best I've ever seen from a player, for a long, long while. I mean, he's just on the end of everything. He seems to be, his perception and his awareness of what's going to happen always seems to be there.
For the next few weeks at least, the arrangement is proving its worth, but could land coach Malcolm Reilly with a headache on Johns' return.
If we're in the same situation 4 weeks down the track and Andrew's fully fit and raring to go and Leo's playing just as good as he is now, then we're in a headache, yeah.
And more off-field speculation about Paul Harrigan's return to the game after a month-long medical layoff due to migraine headaches.
About 3 weeks now I've had no headaches, and I've been training with the boys and in full training, so basically I'm just waiting for my time to be up so I can jump on the field.
After a narrow loss to Canberra last weekend, Mariners coach Graham Murray took a good hard look at the replays and rather than shuffling the deck, focused his training on ball handling. A couple of areas when they're not pointing the finger at anyone is the dummy half passing by other than the hooker was pretty poor, and our fifth tackle kicking options at times were pretty poor. Penrith will be running out with the support of a big home crowd. The Mariners will be concentrating more on the mechanics of the game. An extra boost for the side is the naming of captain Noel Goldthorpe and fullback Robbie Ross for the Super League Tri-Series match against Queensland next week. Meanwhile, in soccer, the Newcastle Breakers side takes on Marconi Fairfield at Breakers Stadium tomorrow night. Coach John Cosmina has given his players the week off from training to think about their low ranking on the Ericsson Cup ladder.
While the top six is, I think, 99.9% gone now, the players have still got a hell of a lot to play for in terms of professional pride and personal pride, and just for the fact that they want to prove that they are a good side.
The Breakers won't be rolling over for Marconi, a team Cosmina says Newcastle can beat.
And we owe something to Marconi, and we're going to make their life miserable, let them sweat about their top six position.
There was good news for the Knights, and of course their youngest fans were of course right onto the Marathon Stadium. Because of that, it was part of their clash against Parramatta.
After last year's disappointing grand final loss to Western Division and playing on home soil, Newcastle was favoured to beat Monaro, but the visitors were first to attack. That try disallowed, but there was nothing wrong with Newcastle's raid 10 minutes later. A combination of good hands and brute strength set up Adam Hall for a 4-0 lead. Brett Christensen added the extras as Newcastle raced away to a 28-point victory. Northern Division was left waiting for Illawarra in its opening round match, and early in the second half, Jamie McCormack and Mick Schmieder were given another 10 minutes rest for back-chatting. Leading 10-6 and up against 11 men, Illawarra had no troubles in increasing the lead, a double to Mark Taylor both in tries and with a boot, helping the Red and Whites to a 16-point lead. Some individual brilliance from Cameron Eaton sealed the result, Illawarra home 30 points to 10. Western Division was given an early shock by Northern Rivers in its match, down 10-6 at half-time, before strong words from the bench signalled the start of a comeback. Western Division then hit top gear. Dean Sadler's length of the field sprint cut only centimetres short of the try line, but quick thinking from dummy half and Dale Watson dived to put Western Division on top. The defending champions looked set to go on with the job, but Northern Rivers hit back to level. Then in the final minute, a freak bounce of the ball gave the underdogs the game and a berth in the semi-finals. And as league officials of the highest level praised the standard of play, North Coast also made it through to the semis. They ran out comfortable winners over Southern Division.
Sitting second on the Optus Cup ladder behind Manly, the Knights find themselves travelling well after 5 rounds of the competition. The side has been turning on both entertaining and solid football, sharpening their play for a game-by-game approach to the season.
Not focused on anything more than Western Suburbs, and it's enough for this week. You know, they're going to be a very determined outfit. They've got a good back line, and Andrew Leeds at the back, full back there, he's very capable. Paul Langmack's going to be a threat to us all the time with the ball in his hands. So we've got specific goals, and we realise that you know, it's going to be a big battle in the forwards. It's be a fierce contest between the two packs.
In front of a hometown crowd and spoiling to make amends after a 28-0 defeat at the hands of Balmain last weekend, Western Suburbs will be out to grab 2 points from the ascending Knights.
They've got an exciting backline, and they've been scoring some points and displaying some very good skills. But we can't start doing that until we really have put down a big physical platform for them to start performing. The forwards have to do that, and of course that's one of our main objectives.
Adam McDougall was sidelined at Knights training this afternoon. An ankle injury has the winger in doubt for Sunday's joust with the Eels.
I'd say I'm 50-50 at this stage. Neil's helping. The doctor's going to make the final analysis early Sunday morning.
McDougall's turning into the crowd favourite at Marathon, and if he can play, he will.
I'd give anything to be able to play on the weekend, especially at home. You know, I cherish every game I can play. It's great.
It's not the only concern for Newcastle. Matthew Johns is also racing the clock to be fit. A niggling knee injury allowed the Knights captain a one-off chance to clown around, but he concedes juggling an out-of-form Parramatta will be a much harder task.
They've had 10 days off, and in that 10 days they've had a lot of criticism, so it's always hard to come up against a quality team. You know, and with that extra bit of fire in the belly, it's going to make it doubly hard.
The Knights have trained enthusiastically all week after consecutive victories in the Optus Cup. After a 44-point win over the Crushers and upset over Sydney City, the Knights are odds-on favourites to continue on their winning way. Newcastle's pre-season form has been outstanding. Wins over Manly, New South Wales Country and Parramatta, hinting at a good season ahead. It continues tomorrow, the Wildfires clashing with Sydney Uni in the semi-final of the Hahn Plate.
It'll be great to get into the final. That's what we're aiming for. We actually played Sydney Uni, our opposition, this week in the final last year, so one of us is not going to make it this year.
All is shaping up for a bumper season. The club now has depth in the forwards, and the backs are the ones to benefit.
We're getting, I think, 50% of the ball, where last year we were getting 30, so we've got a lot more ball to do things with.
The Wildfires are coming off that 48-point win over Parramatta, and while a final berth in the Plate would be nice, it's not imperative.
Our aim is the 20 competition matches to finish as high as we can in the AAMI Cup, but we'd like to win this on the way.
And the Newcastle Rugby League has launched season 97, also claiming it will be one of the best. Club officials and players rubbed shoulders at league headquarters last night to kick off proceedings for the Tooheys Cup. The season starts next weekend with the round one highlight, a grand final replay between Lakes and Wests. Northern Rivers caused the upset of the championships yesterday, eliminating Premier's Western Division, and they were hoping for another crushing win today. A Darren Bruggy penalty put the plan into practice, but a number of attacking rates in the first half were spoiled by poor finishing. No such problems for North Coast. They finished too strongly for a berth in the final. Newcastle led Illawarra 12-8 at half-time in the early semi-final, but the visitors stretched the locals to the limit and Jason Bulgarelli scored the equaliser. 12-all confusion on the scoreboard and then in Illawarra's defence. Newcastle's backs hit top gear, Steve Story capping off a length of the field try before the forwards were represented on the scoreboard by Peter Riding. It ended up a runaway result, Newcastle home 34 points to 18 and through to the final showdown with North Coast. The Mariners host Auckland on Saturday, and according to coach Graham Murray, they owe them one after a loss in round two. In fact,
we owe a few.
He's still got his humour, but there's nothing funny about 5 losses from 6. All matches have been close, but the Mariners have been their own worst enemy.
We've started the match pretty poorly in all bar one, which was Auckland, ironically. That we need a little bit more of that steadying influence early in the match.
It will come from Robbie McCormack. The veteran hooker makes his return to the top grade at the expense of Richard Swain, who drops to the bench.
Yeah, it's good to have another opportunity back, so it's just a matter of getting in there and doing what Muzz wants and get a good start like we've got to do and take it from there.
It will be a big weekend for Noel Goldthorpe and Robbie Ross. Both have been selected in the New South Wales Tri-Series squad to play on Friday. They'll be tested for fitness directly after the game. There are no other major concerns. The Mariners lost to the Warriors in New Zealand. They hope to avenge that defeat on home soil.
We've played well at home, both games we've had at home so far, so if we can put a good start in and start well, I think the confidence will be up and, with a bit of home crowd support, that's going to be a bonus.
Adam McDougall and Brett Grogan both missed the bus this morning, but not voluntarily. McDougall has failed to recover from his ankle injury while Grogan is ill. It's a blow for the Knights and much of the responsibility will now fall on the shoulders of Leo Denver, but the youngster's confidence is growing by the week and tonight is another step in his march towards the State of Origin jumper.
Yes, I think so. If the team goes well and if I go well, then I'll be really confident.
Super League representative duties tonight for Robbie Ross and Noel Goldthorpe. The rest of the side train confidently for the battle with the Warriors, although Tony Iro is in doubt with a hamstring injury.
Probably 50-50 at this stage. I've had hamstring problems before and doesn't feel that good at the moment, but it's settled down from last night.
It's the end of a big away double for Auckland. On Monday, they beat Canberra.
Everyone's playing well. They're a hard nut to crack, but like I say, we're pretty confident. The boys have already faced them this year and come close to them. I'm sure we can go close again. The Newcastle Rugby League kicks off tomorrow. Curry hosts Toronto. North Nelson Bay meets Cessnock, while on Sunday Central Charlestown play Souths. Mainland is at home to Waratah Mayfield, while the grand final replay is the match of the round. Lakes won last year's decider and has remained undefeated in the pre-season competition. West's early form is also faultless. They've conceded only 10 points from 4 pre-season games. It's round 2 of the Newcastle Rugby Union. Wanderers host the Bulls. Hamilton plays Uni. The Waratahs meet Merewether Carlton and Maitland are up against Muswellbrook.
And the NBN Soccer League starts this weekend. Tonight at Breakers Stadium, Wallsend plays Edgeworth. There are 4 other games. Home matches for Toronto, Broadmeadow, Belmont, Swansea and Highfields. After a loss in the grand final last year, Wests had a point to prove at Carl Oval this afternoon, but Lake's defence stood strong. There was nothing in it in a bruising opening 20 minutes until Matthew Smith found space. Jeff Walters added the extras for a 6-0 lead before Ewan McGrady injected his individual brilliance into the match. An elusive step from the veteran halfback set up an even bigger lead and victory for the defending champs. The Newcastle Falcons have hit back at the critics to start the NBL with a crushing win over Illawarra. Last night at the Snake Pit, the Falcons won 112-96. In the NBN Soccer League, Broadmeadow thumped Hamilton 4-0, while Western beat Highfields in the match of the round. The Bears set up the victory with a solid first half at Lyle Carr Oval, Neville Smith netting the visitors' opening goal and setting up Western for a first-up win. Along with Manly, Newcastle is the form team in the Optus Cup. Another win last weekend catapulted the Knights into second place on the ladder, a position they intend to hold this weekend. Matthew Gidley starts at 5/8 for the battle with the Magpies. He replaces Matthew Johns, while Adam McDougall returns from injury. Chief has been told by doctors he is again unavailable.
I think he was very anxious and very keen to play, but they've just said that no, their opinion is a medical opinion and he must have one further week.
Also out of action is Matthew Johns. The Knights playmaker was thought to have further injured his thigh, but
It merely identified the severity of it, which Matthew wasn't aware, and he was so anxious and enthusiastic to get on the park.
It's a blow, but the last time Dinaver and Gidley combined for a full 80 minutes in the halves, the Knights were ruthless in crushing South Queensland. Now a State of Origin chance, Dinaver is playing the best football of his career.
He's a good player. Support play, I mean, he's on the end of everything. And this kick chase, I really haven't seen anybody better.
The forwards too can't go unnoticed in the Knights' return to form, and while the club is now a definite premiership contender, minds are solely on Friday.
Really taking one game at a time, and this week is West.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Newcastle knew from the outset what it was up against at the Sydney United Sports Centre. The locals presented with a minor premiership before the game. In 24 matches this season, Sydney United has lost only 4, but despite the odds, the Breakers started confidently, looking for an upset. A couple of early misses from the visitors and some dubious decisions from the referee left scores locked at 0-0 at the break. The competition leader started the second half in style, third time lucky for Andy Milicic. It stayed 1-0 for most of the half until Sydney United sealed the result in the 75th minute. 2-0 the result. The Breakers, far from disgraced in a match, they bared no significance on playoff positions.
Played some damn good football, and we got quite a lot of compliments from the Sydney United people after the game. The president actually said to me, he can't believe that where we are on the table.
The senior team wasn't the only one to go down. The Breakers youth side also lost to United, but they're still in with a chance of making the finals.
All we really need now is a point next week against Olympic to qualify for the finals, and they should be able to get that at home.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. He may be used to the rough and tumble of rugby league, but nothing could prepare Paul Marquette for this. The remains of his car lay idle at a local wreckers. The Mariners' second rower taken to hospital with head injuries. Mariners staff learned of the accident this morning. It's an obvious blow.
Yeah, it is, because I think he's been one of our better players and certainly one of our best forwards. So it's unfortunate we've had to go without him this week.
Marquette's withdrawal has forced coach Graham Murray into making team changes for Friday night's clash with Perth. Richard Swain returns to the run-on side. He starts as lock. Piccinelli moves to the second row. Murray has kept the nucleus of the team together after that win over Auckland.
We were very, very, I suppose, committed in everything we did, particularly our defence.
It was a welcome return to form. On for and against, they now sit in 7th position on the ladder. Perth are 5th and 2 wins in advance. They also have a psychological advantage after a pre-season victory over Hunter in the Cook Islands. Murray admits it was a game he'd rather forget.
They beat us comprehensively that day, and it was probably a good lesson. It was only 12-0, but they towed us up that day.
The Mariners host Perth on Friday. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. The Breakers' attacking lineup was forced to train outside the main arena today, ball work and striking the focus of the session. But it may be a game for defence. Sydney United is the odds-on favourite to win the NSL, but Clayton Zane is one breaker who wants to cause an upset.
We're fortunate to be one of the only teams that have knocked them off this year, and hopefully we can do it again down on our home turf.
That December 20 match was a dream for Newcastle. Down 1-0, the locals replied with 3 unanswered goals late in the second half to run away with their biggest win of the year.
I was fortunate to get one against them last time, and hopefully I can get 1 or 2 against them this time.
Newcastle is coming off another giant-killing win. Last week they surprised Marconi Fairfield in a goal spree at home. But no one has beaten Sydney United twice this season. The Bulldogs won 3 from 4 in the pre-season competition, and the rock-solid form continued this afternoon at home. Helped by early Toronto errors, Curry was given good field position, and Daryl Johnson wasted no time in making the Scorpions pay. A professional foul landed Craig Mealia 10 minutes in the bin and brought the visitors back within 2. Before a 12-man Curry team again caught Toronto sleeping, Dean Howard finishing off to extend the locals' lead. At a point a minute, the scorers were facing a busy afternoon. Bad handling adding to the Scorpions' woes. Then they finally got it right, Ben still too strong for the home side's sloppy defence. With that, the Bulldogs fired up. Another try from the ensuing play sealing the result for Curry. Both sides entered the match undefeated after wins in the opening round of the competition. 1-1 with 10 minutes left in the first half. Uni looked set to race to the lead. A weight of possession in opposition territory had the students in control, but they couldn't convert. Against the run of play, Oxford's found space and Alyssa Zeech found the net. Uni hit back. Nicole Ambrose netted her second to make it 2-2, but a strong second half for Oxford's was enough for a 3-2 victory. A welcome side at night's training this afternoon. Paul Harrigan back with the top side and fully fit after a bout of severe migraines.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I enjoyed the rest because I basically needed it, but I'm ready now. I feel stronger, and I'm just really looking forward to playing.
Adam McDougall has also passed fitness tests on his injured ankle. He too is expected to be named in the team to tackle Manly on Sunday.
It's been pretty hard emotionally for me. Seeing the team perform so well and not being able to be part of it, it's pretty hard.
So good to be back.
It's going to be great to be back.
The diagnosis isn't so good for the Johns brothers. Andrew's ankle and Maddie's thigh are still causing troubles. No major injury concerns for the Hunter Mariners after the club's second Super League win. Coach Graham Murray made sure of fitness at training. Almost 8,000 fans watched the Mariners outclass Auckland on Saturday.
We were a bit unlucky, I thought, in our first game against Auckland, in Auckland. So it was a sort of bittersweet revenge for this game, but they played particularly well, our boys.
And also on the right side of the scoreboard on the weekend were the Falcons. Newcastle broke records and the hearts of Illawarra fans by thumping the Hawks. Newcastle restricted the home side to just 9 points in the second term. It was Illawarra's lowest scoring quarter in history.
It's just an outstanding job defensively. The guys really stuck to the game plan and it worked well, and our size really wore them down over the course of the game.
The Falcons play again tonight in the Premier League at the entrance before the first home game of the season against North Melbourne on Friday. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
There was a good amount of expectations coming on. And of course it was via radio, that is.
We went on any longer, we may lose it. I think we're right at our peak now. I think if they're going to win it, we're going to win it today.
It was North Coast versus Newcastle.
It's unsure when Brett Grogan will be back on the paddock for the Newcastle Knights.
He's not an up-and-comer, really. He's quite lethargic, obviously lost a bit of weight. And it'll be about sort of 3 or 4 days before he comes out of hospital.
A 3 to 4 week recovery will follow, the long-term future unknown. With Grogan out, Adam McDougall returns from injury to take his place in the centres. Matthew Gidley starts on the wing, while Matthew Johns and Paul Harrigan are also in the squad. Chief has been named on the bench and will assume captaincy when he plays. Matthew rated a good chance after an intensive physical workout yesterday. Johns is nearly back to full strength, but a weakness remains in his kicking game.
That might be restricted somewhat, but we shouldn't have any problem there. There's quite a number of players in the side that can.
All is gearing up for a big clash at Brookvale. Manly is in outstanding form, Newcastle hoping to join them on the top of the table.
A lot of character in the club right now, and we're going to take it to next week's game.
But Manly at Brookvale won't be an easy assignment. Last year, the Knights threw away the same match in the opening 15 minutes.
A daunting task to go to Brookvale and play against the best team in the competition.
The Knights Manly game is Sunday afternoon. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Matthew Johns was one notable absence from Knights training this afternoon as Leo Deniver and Owen Craigie went shot for shot at goal. The Knights' other star scorer was in physio, fighting to be fit. Johns is racing the clock to take the field against Manly. A decision will be made Sunday afternoon. Newcastle's quick hands were given a thorough test by Malcolm Reilly. Ball control will again have to be spot on if the Knights are to break Manly's golden streak at home. The Sea Eagles have won 16 on the trot at Brookvale and 6 from 6 at home against the Knights.
It doesn't really worry. It's just another game of football. Statistics say that they've been successful there recently, but they're only statistics.
It's a welcome return to football for Paul Harrigan. He'll start from the bench, while Leo Deniver again has the task of masterminding the Knights' attack. But the young halfback will also be tested in defence. He marks an informed Craig Field.
He's going really well. I think he's the kind of driving force behind him this year. That's why they stay successful. And it's going to be a tough one, but I'm going to just worry about my own game, I think.
NBN's delayed telecast of the big match from Brookvale starts Sunday at 4 o'clock. It's been a long off-season for the Newcastle Wildfires and finally it's drawn to a close. The AAMI Cup starts this weekend. The club's preparation finished last night with an unopposed team run. It's been their best build-up to a new season. Newcastle host Penrith in round one. It's a match they're favoured to win.
We would be expected to beat them and we should beat them.
It should also be the first of many wins this season. The Wildfires have speed, height and a new depth of talent.
We've got that interchangeability of players and it doesn't matter what you think or say. When the competition's there, every player rises to the occasion to keep himself in front of it.
Tomorrow's game starts at 3. In the Newcastle Rugby Union, Muswellbrook will look for its first win of the season when it plays the Waratahs. East meet Hamilton. Singleton clash with Maitland in the match of the day, while Merewether, Carlton and Wanderers complete the round. In local league, Cessnock hosts Central Charlestown tonight, while there are 4 matches on Sunday. Waratah plays North Nelson Bay. Toronto is at home to Maitland. West meet Curry, while Souths will try and contain the Seagulls. Lakes were outstanding last weekend at home. The defending premiers outclassed arch rivals Wests. And in the NBN Soccer League, there is one match tonight. Edgeworth play Easts, while round 2 is completed Saturday. Cessnock, Western, Belmont, Swansea and Hamilton all have the home ground advantage. The squad was put through an early morning swim at Merewether. All players passed fit. Hunter has now won 3 from 4 at Breakers Stadium, but there's still room for improvement.
Yeah, there's always a few things to work on. Probably that 15-minute period in the second half, too much drop ball, and a few stages in the first half. But other than that, it was good to get the win.
The Mariners' next match is against Cronulla. Meantime, Cessnock has bounced back from its round 1 defeat to beat Central Charlestown in the Newcastle Rugby League. At home last night, the Goannas overcame a slow start before winning 24-14. The locals were given an early scare by the Butcher Boys. The visitors led 10-6 at the break, but Cessnock hit its straps in the second half to fight back. It was Cessnock's first win of the season, Central's second loss. And the Newcastle Wildfires have started Rugby Union's AAMI Cup in style, beating Penrith at the #1 sports ground. After strong pre-season performances, the Wildfires were favoured to win the match, and after opening the scoring with a penalty goal, the locals then increased their lead with a combination of strength, speed and the finishing of Brad Dilly. Penrith landed 2 quick penalties to make it a 2-point ball game, but when Christian Taylor put down the pedal, his outside backs did the rest of the work to run in the Wildfire's second try and a 13-6 lead. It looked set to open the floodgates. Lightning Hands and David Earp joined the scorers. Then everyone joined in again for Newcastle's fourth touchdown and an uncatchable lead. The Knights recovered from yesterday's loss to Manly at the gym. Even their sideline players joined in the action. Andrew Johns gave himself a hard workout. The eternal optimist is hopeful of playing against Illawarra, but not overconfident.
I want to come back at 100%. I don't want to come back hobbling a little bit, so I'll see what it is.
Malcolm Reilly will announce the team to play the Steelers tomorrow, and all are hoping the country stars will be there come kick-off.
You know, there's a couple of guys there that are pretty used to playing the representative football and coming back to club level, so hopefully the other guys can maybe get used to it the same way.
The club trained this afternoon at Smith Park. Apart from a sore ankle for Leo Denver, all players are fit. A similar situation for the Hunter Mariners, although Graham Murray worked his side to exhaustion this morning after that win over Perth. He says the team won't be changing dramatically.
Probably not. There's probably Scotty Hill, who didn't play much of the match, will be in some doubt, but apart from him, I don't think there'll be many changes now.
The Mariners start a run of matches against the Super League heavyweights when they meet Cronulla. The Sharks short a bite after that surprise loss to Adelaide.
We would have liked them to win by 50 instead of lose by a big score, but, you know, it's certainly a good challenge for us going down there at Shark Park, and, you know, we'll be up to it, that's for sure.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
Peter Lawler enjoyed a successful 1996, his javelin stable winning Olympic silver with Louise McPaul, while Tamworth's Andrew Hawthorne reached the World Junior Championships. But the year wasn't as fruitful for Andrew Curry, the national champion now opting to part company with his coach of 11 years.
It come down to my personal happiness, and I wasn't happy at the time, and I sort of lost the enjoyment for athletics and lost enjoyment for throwing javelins.
Curry denies the split has come after new star Adrian Hatcher enjoyed almost immediate success with the Olympic throwing coach and pressuring Curry for the national title.
Adrian and I are still best of friends.
But Lawler, Curry's coach of 11 years, is still coming to terms with the decision.
I was devastated. He asked me years ago to coach him to the end of his career, and I said I would, and I've often said to him that I would not desert him through thick and thin.
But Lawler says he feels for Curry's girlfriend, Louise McPaul, who is now caught between loyalties to coach and boyfriend.
Lou has indicated she's staying with me. I'm very, very grateful for that loyalty. I mean, we've been a very successful team.
Curry's move comes just 3 months before the start of the biggest championship of the year.
In terms of the timing, I think that was the biggest shock. There was only a few months to go to World Champs. He must be quite desperate, I would think.
Curry now looks for a new coach. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The Mariners will be hoping they don't need Tim Madison's goal-kicking skills tomorrow night as the club tries to extract sweet revenge against the Reds. The last time the clubs met, Perth walloped the Hunter. Madison is keen to even up that score and renew an old friendship with opposing forward Rod Howe.
We played most of our junior sort of career together at Central Charlestown. Played a fair bit of sort of junior rep sort of years together, and all in all, just pretty good pals.
Yeah, I've played against him a few times now. I always enjoy the experience, so it'll be great.
Howie, as he's known to teammates, has gone one up in the friendly rivalry between the two, having just been selected in the Australian Super League team.
Yeah, he's taken the step of getting picked in the Australian Super League side for next Friday night, and I mean, it's probably something that in the future I'll be aiming at. So I mean, yeah, it'll be good to go up against him.
The battle between the opposing halves should also be intense. The Mariners' Noel Goldthorpe taking on former local Matthew Rodwell. The Mariners will be trying to make it 3 in a row at home, but the Reds will be tough, Perth running 5th after winning 4 of its 7 games. The task for the locals will be made even harder if Tony Iro is forced out with his troublesome hamstring. He's rated as only an each-way bet of taking the field. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
After just being cleared of migraines, Paul Harrigan was keeping a cool head with Country today. Nursed back into fitness by the Knights, Chief has played only a few moments on the field this season.
I just got to throw myself in the deep end. You know, I have no match fitness, and did a little bit yesterday, and you know, I'll just do my best.
Back in Newcastle, Knights coach Malcolm Reilly wasn't as diplomatic.
I think they've overlooked the fact that he's been out of the game for 7 weeks, and the pressure they've put him under by selecting him as captain to lead the side, I just don't think that it's a pressure that he needs.
Harrigan returned to football at Brookvale yesterday. He played less than half the match. Serious migraines have kept him away from the game for most of the season. The Knights have slowed his return on medical advice.
We've not played him now for 7 weeks, and all of a sudden they're expecting to play 2 games in 3 days, which I think's unfair on Paul.
Thoughts of another injustice, this time for Tony Butterfield. He missed City selection. Officials thought he was eligible for country.
Mate, I'm just disappointed. I would have liked to had a crack at it and play against some of the teammates. It would have been a good night out, particularly here at home. But it's not to be this year. Maybe next year.
At 31, Butterfield is perhaps playing the best football of his career. Players and coaching staff alike say they're embarrassed by his exclusion.
He's got the form there. He doesn't need to prove anything to the selectors for the City, and to pick Josh Stewart and Colin Ward in front of him, I think it's an insult.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Despite some recent strong performances, the Mariners still have one record they would rather do without.
There is a statistic there that, and I told the boys that we're the only Super League side that haven't won away. So statistics are made to be broken.
It's an imposing task for the Mariners. They'll have to break that losing streak against Cronulla. The Sharks have a superb record on their home ground, but Adelaide proved on the weekend that winning is possible.
Yeah, they probably didn't do us any favours. They got probably going to get them a bit crankier, but Adelaide played particularly well, and I think Cronulla would be the first to admit they didn't play all that well.
Graham Murray has made one change to the team. Gavin Thompson returns from injury at the expense of Robbie Bannister. Tony Iroh's fitness to be checked after the Super League test on Friday. The Sharks will rely even more on players backing up.
They've got 5 backing up and the coach. So it's probably a good time, as much as they didn't play well last week. So a bit of disruption to them and Underworth.
Hunter has scored 2 wins from its last 2 matches. Defence again will be the key to victory.
We've really got to do a lot of extra work in the marker area because you've really got to stop from going forward.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. It was a fast and open game of hockey at the International Centre this afternoon. Norths had a 2-1 lead with 20 minutes left and kept up the attack with a series of short corners. Last-ditch defence from the Phantoms was doing its best to frustrate the Double Blues, but North's early lead was the difference. Tennis and finals day of the ITF World Veterans Championships at District Park. Only the best of the 400-strong field were left to fight out the 3-set deciders. A number of strong performances from the international contingent. Americans William Davis and Chuck DeVoe smashed their way to the 65 men's doubles title, while the Aussie sisters Len and Margaret Way kept the local flag flying. They beat Charlene Hillbrand and Suella Steele in 3 sets. Lakes were favoured to win this afternoon's battle at Townsend Oval, but the Seagulls again had to do without the services of suspended captain David Smith. Souths were taking full advantage until Ewan McGrady looked set to ruin the Lions' early work. His sprint caught the home side off guard, but not the referee. That try disallowed. There was nothing wrong with the visitors' next break. Matthew Smith backing himself for a 4-0 Lakes lead. Souths level, but both sides failed to get on a roll in the opening stages. Referee Ron Williams called up 7 penalties in the opening 15 minutes. The second term was all Lakes. They finished too strongly for a 10-point victory. Yesterday he attacked selectors, today referees and their boss Mick Stone.
Honestly, there's that much going off at the moment that just isn't right. I mean, he's got a real headache. No wonder he's not rung me back for a couple of days mixed down. He's probably inundated with meetings and complaints.
Malcolm Reilly has joined the call for the introduction of video replays as an aid for referees. A number of calls went against his side on the weekend. The man in the middle, Paul Simpkins.
I think the referee really was inexperienced for the standard of the game that he was expected to control.
The Knights have also joined the controversy about that new throwing rule. After his 1-match suspension, they're obviously not too disappointed that Adam Muir won't be playing for country on Friday, but they do think the law needs clarification.
That tackle which is being made, it's so close to being a perfect tackle that it's unreal.
I think it's the best style of tackle you can do, so it's pretty ordinary, I think.
Really has named all 5 country origin stars in the team to host Illawarra on Sunday. They'll be checked for fitness after Friday's match. Despite missing out on yesterday's training, Leo Denver has also been named in the team, but he is in doubt.
And Leo Denver is making a trip to Sydney tomorrow to see Neil Alpin and have ligament damage examined under anaesthetic for stress.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
It hasn't been a dream start to country's origin preparation. There have been numerous enforced changes to the side. Coach Tom Radonicus says despite the unsettled lineup, country will be at full strength by Friday.
It sort of rolls me up a bit. Do they rate us a 10? And what are we doing here? Like, might as well stay back in Sydney and have a drink, No, I rate ourselves a damn good chance. I've got a good side.
Joining the side for training today was Illawarra Steelers centre Paul McGregor. His campaign hampered by a knee injury. McGregor says despite the new faces in the side, country's morale is high.
Tommy, he brings out the best of the boys. He had a chat to us yesterday and we had a bit of team bonding last night. We had, a couple of drinks and stuff and, we're really just looking forward to getting out there and playing.
Radonicus is still to announce a starting lineup. It's likely skipper Paul Harrigan will be rotated with Manly forward David Gillespie. The ever-colourful Radonicus has no doubts as to country's chances.
Well, I reckon we were not that far behind them anyway, but if they would call us underdogs or underdogs, we'll be pretty fired up, I can give you the message.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
It was sweet news for Leo Denver. Virtually unknown at the start of the season, the young halfback has made such an impression with Newcastle, he's been included in Queensland's squad of 22. Leo is one of 8 new faces. One of the veterans, although he didn't know it, is Robbie O'Davis.
I just assumed it's about 3 or 4 weeks away, the selections. I didn't know Queensland picked the squad, so I'm very happy. Leo? Leo, cool, yep. Happy, more happy now.
The selection is due reward for the 2 Knights. Both have been big helpers in Newcastle's rise up the ladder. It will hopefully continue this weekend when the club plays Gold Coast. Andrew Johns was tested for fitness today by the club's medical staff. He won't be there for the Knights' charge north.
I've been there for 9-10 weeks, so another week won't hurt me.
Injury has got the better of Adam McDougall for Saturday's game. He's out while Paul Harrigan will start from the bench.
I would only play him for a small period.
Tony Butterfield captains the side, which travels there and back on match day.
We've recorded some good results up there this year, and we won't be taking them lightly.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. They've been rocked by injuries and controversy, but the country squad is now complete, although the starting lineup is far from set.
Well, I've got the team and the selectors have agreed we're going to have to change it around. The starting lineup, I might know till Friday morning, and then that's been straight down the line.
Captain Paul Harrigan will be there despite debate over his selection. Radonicus has little doubt Chief will rise to the occasion.
He wants to play football, he loves to represent. That's why he's such a champion, and he wants to play, and I'll play until he gets tired, and I'll come and spell him.
Harrigan is playing down the controversy. He hopes to play as much of the match as possible.
Match fitness is, I've got to get there as I go, and no better way, I suppose, in 2 games in 2 days.
For some, Friday will be a new experience. Matthew Gidley has won fresh face for senior representative football.
I remember long ago I was watching them on TV, thinking, who are these blokes now? I'm playing alongside them, and it's good, yeah.
The country origin team will train twice daily in the lead-up to the match. City arrives on Thursday. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. It's a must-win game for Hunter tonight. Equal last on the Super League ladder. The club needs a victory to keep in touch with a bunched top 5.
We're a chance. Every game's different, and this one will obviously rain affected, but we're in with a big chance.
After a loss to the Bulldogs in round 1, Hunter is hoping to turn the tables. Brad Goddard jumps to the bench, joining Brett Camorley.
Having Brett Camorley on the interchange bench sort of adds a little bit to us because it gives a bit more of the kicking game, and the kicking game will play a big part in tonight's game.
All the action on NBN tonight from 9:30. The Steel City Soccer Challenges are always tough battles. After being beaten on penalties in 1995, Northern New South Wales hit back last year to win 3-2. Another close match looms tomorrow. Ground conditions at Topper Stadium is forced to move to Blacksmith's Oval. The challenge puts a rest to the NBN Soccer League, although there is one match to be played. Broadmeadow hosts East Maitland on Sunday in a rescheduled game from round 5. More postponements in the Newcastle Rugby League. The West's Waratah game has been called off. There is one game tomorrow, while on Sunday Lakes host Maitland, Cessnock meets Toronto, and at Marathon Stadium Souths play Curry. The Knights also take to their home ground this weekend, but not against an ARL side, instead themselves. The first meet the seconds in a trial game. And with the Newcastle Rugby Union engaged in the Steel City Challenge, Series 8 of the Premiership will be played on Sunday. University plays Merewether Carlton, Maitland meet Wanderers, Eastern Districts host Singleton, while Muswellbrook tackle Hamilton. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Training with a difference at the Knights' home ground this morning, the first pitted against the seconds in a semi-formal match. Watched by a handful of supporters, the sides impressed with all of the usual flair. The result wasn't important, but for the record, the first did just as they should by crossing several times. A lot more at stake this afternoon at St John Oval at Charlestown for the Butcher Boys battle with North Nelson Bay. After missing the last 2 weeks because of washouts, the locals were a bit rusty in the first half and trailed 16-2. But the Butcher Boys started the second term a different side, and after only a couple of minutes they fooled everyone except the referee. Centimetres short on the first attempt, Central Charlestown crossed in the next play to bring it back to 16 points to 6. Mark Golden added the extras for the home side to make it an 8-point ball game before North Nelson Bay hit its straps again, only to see Central scramble in defence. The Mullins had many second-half chances, but most of them slipped away, until Darren Barrett held onto the ball to put the visitors back in control. Central had all but thrown in the towel, but the Bay wasn't finished. Craig Foggo finished on the end of a neat chip to put the Mullins up by 18. Before the winger then turned on the pace and found his teammates in support, North Nelson Bay running away to a 36-8 victory. It was the club's 4th win this season and Central's 4th loss. No, it wasn't St George against the New Look Knights. Instead, this afternoon's Newcastle Rugby League battle between South Newcastle and Curry. Poor conditions at Townsend Oval forced a move to Marathon Stadium, but despite the neutral ground, the Bulldogs were proving right at home, racing to a 6-4 lead before Paul Romanak slipped a pass to Phil Williams to increase the advantage. 12-4 penalties late in the tackle count didn't help the Lions' cause. Instead, they presented Phil Williams with another shot at points. Curry's defence was also proving brutal, while South's over-enthusiastic efforts in the same department landed Tony Highmarsh 10 minutes in the bin. Despite playing with only 12 men, the Lions forced back-to-back sets of 6 at the end of the half, and from the restart, Brian Dowd needed only one tackle to bring Souths back into the match. It started a big comeback. Souths kept its intensity rolling into the second half for the club's 5th win of the season. To the ladder, and Lakes is still out in front. South's narrow victory pushes them into outright second. North Nelson Bay is close behind. West, Curry, Maitland and Cessnock have one game to catch up, while Central and Waratah Mayfield have 2. The early signs were good for Newcastle. The Falcons raced to a big lead thanks to pinpoint accuracy across the court. The locals' lead ballooned to 10, forcing radical changes to Perth's tactics. David Van Dyke got the message. Dumped from the Falcons roster at the end of last year, the American import got sweet revenge. Tony Jensen kept Newcastle in it, but the Wildcats took the lead by the main break, only to increase it further in the second half. Van Dyke's haul of 29 helping Perth to a 21-point victory, Newcastle slipping out of the top 6. The car park was a creek, the ground a quagmire, the stand a pool of water.
We have to think of the players, and we also have to think of the safety of both the players and the patrons. It's certainly atrocious weather.
The under-20 second and first grade matches were all postponed. It's hoped the games will be played during the State of Origin split round.
I've spoken to South people, and they're quite happy to postpone the game.
And Rugby League at Marathon Stadium wasn't the only sporting washout in the city today. Hockey at the adjoining International Centre at Broadmeadow was also cancelled because of dangerous playing conditions. They They trained at Marathon Stadium without their Origin stars, the Knights' preparation far from ideal. It's been a tough week with 5 players out on Origin duties. Newcastle's lead up to the Illawarra game has been badly disrupted. The Origin players will be tested for fitness tomorrow. Halfback Leo Denver was tested today. He's been nursing an ankle injury all week, but relieved coaching staff this afternoon when he declared himself a starter.
Yeah, mate, it's alright. Everything's come pretty good when I wanted it to, but yeah, I was scared at the start of the week, but I'm feeling good now.
Also expected to be in is Adam McDougall. Despite missing training with his ankle injury, the Inform Centre says he'll be right to play. With Harrigan, Glanville and Richard set to back up from tonight, a lot of the responsibility will fall on the shoulders of the other forwards on Sunday. After missing the rep game through suspension, Muir is primed for a big match, as is the man the selectors missed out.
It's more to prove to myself that I'm travelling as well as I desired to go, and I'm not happy with how things are going, so I need a big one.
NBN's Knights Illawarra replay 10:30 Sunday night. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. The Falcons lost last weekend but were far from disgraced against the North Melbourne Giants. It's back-to-back matches at home this weekend. The clash against Perth set to be a battle of 2 big, tough forward lines. Newcastle not only has the benefit of the home court advantage, but will be buoyed also by the memory of last year's victory. In their last match against Perth, the Falcons won 96-91. The Newcastle Rugby League kicks off round 3 of the competition with a twilight meeting between Lakes and Cessnock tomorrow. In other games, Central hosts Waratah Mayfield, North Nelson Bay plays Toronto, Maitland meets Curry, while Souths and West tackle the match of the round. Both sides entered the game with 1 win and 1 loss from their last 2 matches. The Lions coming off that 10-point loss to Lakes, while West come off a win over Curry. All Sunday matches in the NBN Soccer League. Toronto hosts Belmont Swansea, while there are home games also for Cessnock, Easts, Highfields and Walls End. And 4 games in the Newcastle Rugby Union. Hamilton will try and keep its undefeated record intact against Singleton. The Waratahs play Wanderers, Uni meet Muswellbrook, while East and Merewether Carlton complete the round. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Marty McLean visited the specialist today for further treatment on his injured finger, dislocated in the Falcons' first home game of the season against North Melbourne. The diagnosis is encouraging. He's got his fingers crossed that he'll be back for the weekend's NBL game, but Wednesday's Premier League match is out of the question.
It's the hardest thing, just sitting there watching everyone go around. You know, you come to practice every day and you just watch the guys there, the team's there and you're over here, and it's just, it makes it really tough.
The Falcons play Penrith in the Premier Cup semi at Bankstown.
It's a bit of a shame that Illawarra forfeited their match. I would have liked to have played an NBL team, but you know, we're starting to learn the attitude. It doesn't matter who you play. The main thing is that we come out and play with the same intensity all the time.
Next up, the home game against Townsville. After consecutive losses in the competition, Dennis has an appetite for getting back on track.
I think it's important that we start to learn that, you know, when it's time to get tough, it's time when we dig in and, you know, really show how good we can be.
A win will make it 2 from 4. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. No, they're not the latest answer to the defunct Gold Coast Rollers, and their technique certainly isn't copybook, but the Gold Coast results speak for themselves. After plenty of travelling in the opening 8 rounds of the ARL, the Chargers return to Carrara tomorrow, the club hoping to basket its 4th victory of the season.
Home crowd support will lift the blokes over another leg, and as I said, we'll come out firing and they'll know they've been in the battle.
The opposition is Newcastle, and while the Knights have the best defensive record in the competition, Phil Economides is also wary of their attack.
They're going to be hard to beat, but as I said to my blokes, we'll get our game plan bulletproof this week and play to that, and hopefully everything will go our way.
Battles between the clubs have been shared. Both have won 5 with 1 draw.
They're not easy to beat up there, and you know, all we're really concerned about is improving on our last performance.
That was a grinding win over Illawarra. The Knights team is unchanged. Gold Coast doesn't have the same continuity from its clash with Parramatta. Marty Bella is out in the forwards, while in the back line, Andrew King returns as fullback and John McKelleher moves into the centres. Saturday night's replay on NBN at 9:30. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. It's been a solid start to the season for Newcastle. After running riot in their first home game of the season with a thumping victory over Penrith, they followed it up with a 1-point loss to Randwick. The focus is now on Canberra, and with the number of Kookaburras out for representative duties, the Wildfires are planning to strike.
They've got plenty of depth, and in their first year in the competition they made the grand final in first grade and won the reserve grade premiership, and last year they won the Colts premiership, so they've got plenty of depth. They have got a few players out, but they've been performing well and they'll be hard.
Newcastle is equal fourth on the ladder, Canberra equals seventh.
It's important that you gain momentum early in the season for a couple of reasons. One, to get the points and get yourself up the table, and two, to put the opposition in a bit of doubt of how strong you are and adjust accordingly when they play you.
It's Series 5 of the Newcastle Rugby Union tomorrow. Muswellbrook hosts Easts. Maitland plays the Waratahs. Merriweather meet Hamilton, while Uni tackles Singleton. The Bulls were given a hiding by Hamilton last weekend, but should be buoyed by the return of New South Wales country reps Steve Merrick, Tim Rapp and Bradley Schultz. Two matches in the coalfields tomorrow to kick off round 4 of the Newcastle Rugby League. Curry play the unbeaten North Nelson Bay and Cessnock host Souths, while on Sunday there are home matches for Waratah Mayfield, Toronto and Wests. The Rosellas entered the match coming off consecutive victories in the competition. And in the NBN Soccer League, Edgeworth plays Toronto tonight, Broadmeadow meet Western on Saturday, and the round is completed with 3 matches on Sunday. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
In 1980, a much younger Tom Raudonikis captained New South Wales in a fiery inaugural State of Origin clash with Queensland. 17 years later, Raudonikis is back, today named as Blues coach. It's a sensitive moment for the man of nails, who's the first player to both captain and coach the Blues.
It means a lot to me, you know, to have captained the first one sort of thing, and then getting the job now. Yeah, so I'll go out there and I'll just remember the first game too, and we got beat. And there was a bit of a stink up in the game too, you know, so it brings back a lot of memories.
Raudonikis had little time for celebration. His mind is set on tomorrow's clash with City. The City players checked in for their date at Marathon Stadium earlier this afternoon, followed by a light training run.
We've got a good team here, you know, a couple of young blokes and some old hard nuts, and like normal City country games, it's always a tough game, and I think it's just a battle of attrition.
City centre Jamie Ainscough has been forced out with a knee injury. He'll be replaced by Sydney City's Shane Riggin. Country had their last training run today and will relax up until game time. Tomorrow's clash would give Raudonikis an ideal opportunity to select a New South Wales squad. However, his attention will be on one team only.
I'll be mainly just worried about my blokes tomorrow night, because that's my job, and that's what I'll be really looking at.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Hunter finished its preparation for Saturday's game indoors this morning with coach Graham Murray talking tactics. The side, minus Tony Iro, watched Cronulla in action. Murray quietly confident his team can repeat the efforts of Adelaide in stealing the competition points.
I think there's a little bit of similarity in everyone. They would have picked up something about our play, but hopefully we've picked up a little bit about their play.
The Mariners are cautious of the Sharks. Today's special mention was made of their kicking game.
It's pretty common knowledge that they're good in the air. Barnett, Rogers, Peachy, Henninghausen, they're pretty good, so why not use that as a tactic?
Hunter is coming off 2 wins from 2, but their away record isn't so flash. They've yet to win a row game.
Oh, I think we've got to contain fellas like Green, Henninghausen, and particularly Nick Howe. They're very dangerous players. I think we can contain those. We'll go a long way to winning.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Newcastle was relying on its Origin stars getting through last night's Sydney Country match. The good news today was that they have. Despite the usual bumps and bruises, all 5 players have been past fit to take the field again on Sunday. Of concern to the Knights, though, is that sighting of Paul Harrigan. Chief earned a meeting with the tribunal after this king hit on Colin Ward. He'll still be able to play against the Steelers this weekend. Centre Adam McDougall may not be as lucky. He's nursing an ankle injury and will be given until Sunday afternoon to prove his fitness. And the Mariners' Tony Iro has been cleared to back up after his efforts with New Zealand last night in the Super League test. The Kiwi international will start from the bench in the Mariners' clash tonight against Cronulla. Country first entered the match with an undefeated record against the Sydney Metros, but the boys from the bush were held to a scoreless first half. The second term looks set to deliver more action. Country found possession and a perfectly weighted grubber found Brett Cullen. 4-0, Country again opted for the boot, but Metro bombed their efforts at increasing the lead with scrambling defence, until Dean Sadler finally caught the visitors off guard. It may not have been the most entertaining try, but that was to follow. 8 sets of hands and some great backing up down the grandstand touchline gave Country an unassailable lead. It was fantastic stuff, so too the kicking game of Brett Christensen. He landed 2 goals to take the final scoreline to 16-0. It may still be the start of the season, but the Bulls already have injury concerns. That, coupled with the loss of New South Wales country representatives Steve Merrick, Tim Rapp and Bradley Schultz, didn't help their cause in today's game against Hamilton. The opening half was tough. Singleton opened the scoring with a long-range penalty goal before Hamilton replied when Daniel McGavin's lightning inside pass found a flying Robbie McNaughton. A Hamilton penalty made it a 5-point ball game, and the locals were unlucky not to increase the lead further. They dominated the first half, their persistent efforts finally rewarded against a tired Singleton defence. Netball in the first home game for Charlestown in the Inter-District Division 1 competition, the opposition, Parramatta Auburn. The locals raced to a 14-8 quarter-time lead, goal attack Amy Mansfield continuing Charlestown's role in the second term by landing her first 2 attempts. The visitors could do little right under the pressure of a determined hometown defence, the locals' lead ballooning to 12 goals at the main break. Parramatta Auburn failed in its bid for a second-half comeback. One match this afternoon in the Newcastle Women's Hockey Premiership, Novo's first doing just as they should by knocking over the seconds. But without a number of regular first graders in the top team, they did it tough. In fact, the underdogs nearly escaped with a draw. With only 40 seconds left on the clock, the Ones netted their second for an unconvincing victory. The Rosellas had it their own way right from kick-off in this afternoon's match at Harker Oval. The home side played their own brand of touch football against what can only be termed as woeful defence. West led 18-0 after only 10 minutes. Their 4th try of the afternoon came in a similar easy style, the Rosellas hardly working up a sweat. 42-zip at half-time, and West lead only increased in the second term, the Pumpkin Pickers returning with an embarrassing defeat. To the NRL ladder, and Lake's huge win over Waratah Mayfield puts them in outright first position. West, Curry and North Nelson Bay are on 6 points, and after their 4th consecutive loss, the Cheetahs are the only team yet to register points. Words of encouragement from a familiar face last night. Former Falcons coach Tom Wisman joined an enthusiastic home crowd to watch Newcastle's attempt at bouncing back into form. The locals started well, individual brilliance from Tony Jensen, followed up by similar team efforts, the Falcons sending a warning to the Suns before the visitors found their mark as well, issuing the perfect reply. Much of the first quarter was spent on the floor, but after one too many stints on the deck, it almost got out of hand. Townsville went to the first break with a 7-point advantage before the young guns slashed the lead through Ben Melmoth. And just as Newcastle looked set to cloud the visitors' attack, the Suns found space again to take an entertaining 66-55 lead to the main change. Townsville was hoping for a runaway result, and its plan was being put into action until 5 minutes before the siren when the Falcons started a 3-point revival. First Tony Jensen, then Butch Hayes, and when the captain landed another, Newcastle had control. Hayes was fouled out of the game with only a couple of minutes on the clock, but his efforts and Jensen's 28-point haul were the backbone of Newcastle's victory. Conceding only 38 points in the second half, it was smiles all around in the dressing rooms, praise from Wisman and Dennis alike.
That's a hell of a job because we got focused on our whole defence, we got focused on good ball pressure, and we stopped turning the ball over. Three things that we're going to get very, very good at.
After a loss to Lakes last weekend, Souths were planning to get back on track this afternoon at Townsville Oval. Both sides scored converted tries in the opening 10 minutes before the visitors hit the lead with their second touchdown. Backing up from Friday's Country First match, Steve Storey had no problems in adding the extras. Some were thinking South ship was about to sink, and when Adrian McNabb was given 10 in the bin for a professional foul, their heads were almost underwater. West continued its charge, Storey again putting his mark on the game with a neat 360 and an offload to Tony Hutton. 10 points down, South hit back before the break, but the early lead was enough for West to steal the 2 competition points.
The match between City versus Country was a huge one, but however, Paul Harrigan has been cleared to play for the Knights versus Steelers clash after he was cleared by the judiciary for this king hit on a City player.
Edgeworth was favoured to win last night's match, but the Eagles were asleep early on, Scott McLeroy's header finding Daniel McBreen. The Stag surprise goal and the bizarre ritual that followed sent alarm bells ringing through the home side. They spent the rest of the half camped in opposition territory. The weight of possession had to take its toll, and a couple of minutes later Edgeworth teamed up with Toronto's defenders to net the equaliser. It was the start of an Edgeworth onslaught. The Eagles scored another 4 goals for a convincing victory and a spot on the top of the table. He's been sidelined all season with an ankle injury, but the good news is that he's almost right to return. Andrew Johns has been training well with the Knights for the last couple of weeks. It's expected he'll be given the green light to play on Saturday. Brother Matthew may need another week, and despite continuing ankle problems for Adam McDougall and Leo Denver, the rest of the side is fit. Lee Jackson has brought up well after a back spasm that forced him from the field yesterday. So too the Knights' 5 country origin reps, but the veterans and rookies alike admit 2 games in 3 days wasn't easy.
I probably used to be alright when I was about 10 years younger, but pushing 31 at the moment, a little bit difficult.
I'm struggling as well. I might as well be 31 myself. I mean, I felt fine before the game, but I tell you now, I can sleep for a couple of days, I'm gone.
Gidley again impressed in the battle of the young 5'8". The Knights youngster outplayed his opposite, Trent Barrett.
Oh, I was happy with how I played. I mean, I didn't go into the game sort of thinking, to get on top. I just want to go out and sort of, point the boys around a bit, sort of worry about winning the game more than get on top of him.
Newcastle plays Gold Coast this weekend.
I'm looking forward to it and reasonably confident.
Captain Paul Harrigan will be there after the ARL's video review committee decided no further action was necessary after Chiefs' 2 big hits on Mark Carroll and Colin Ward.
In the NBN Soccer League, Western has drawn with Broadmeadow 0-0, while Cessnock has done the same with Belmont Swansea 2-2. Meanwhile, East have defeated Wallsend 2-0, and Hamilton has defeated the Highfields 2-0 as well. Also, it's become more huge, right up for the other ones. And of course, the Highfields were doing just the same. And of course, Hamilton was, of course, threatening to still win, and they certainly were. And of course, because of it, Hamilton were just doing the good odds. And of course, never say die.
They were comprehensively beaten on the weekend. Today, some were in physio, but the Knights still have their sense of humour.
They can't afford to drop those sort of points, especially when nearly halfway through the season, so it sort of starts getting the nitty-gritty from now on, and and Mark Lingle certainly didn't help the cause.
Mate, well, we just got to have a look at the video, really. Bloody wingers.
As Glanville overcame a torn cartilage and Albert a corked elbow, the light-hearted sledging helped ease the pain of Saturday night's loss. The Chargers won by 8 in a match Newcastle expected to win.
It was a very disappointing effort up there, and we have to have a good look at ourselves, and I guess the beauty is too, we've got some good players coming back in too.
Andrew Johns is ready to return for the South's clash. Brother Matthew is an outside chance, while Chief is expected to get the full 80 minutes. Super League and the Hunter Mariners were back at it today after a week's rest due to the split round. After his tragic car accident, Paul Marquette is back to full strength. Pepe passed fit by doctors to play next Monday against Canterbury.
Yeah, it's hard watching it. You don't enjoy sitting up in the stands. You'd rather be out there running around. So, I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
With the Tri-Series continuing on Friday and next Wednesday, both teams' preparation will be hampered, although the Mariners have already learnt a lesson.
Well, I had a few out too, and they steamed roll us really, so we'll be prepared.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
Up next, we have part 2 from late 1987, which was the Knights' best year.
I'm going to buy that.
Into big business now, are we?
No, I'm quite happy with the small business I own, Louise.
Who are you banking with now, Bob?
Newcastle Permanent.
No, I know. I mean, your company banking.
Yeah, we're with the firm.
Didn't know they did business banking?
Well, they have done for quite some time now, Dad.
Oh, good move.
That's mine. Thank you.
Your business is in good hands with Newcastle Permanent.
They're our building society.
The big red ball, from the bush to the bay. Yes, it's Lotto. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. It's the big one you want. It's the game for you. 'Cause it's the big red ball that makes dreams come true. Dreams come true. Dreams come true. The big red ball. The big red ball. The big red ball that makes dreams come true.
Wake up in the morning, gotta get
Because the Herald is the best way to start your day.